Before I get started, there's some words I want to say that I think we need to acknowledge something amazing that happened in this room today. And I really think that hats off to the Best in Tech Planning Committee and everybody, and Apple as well, who was responsible for getting Dean Hudson over here. You guys witnessed something historical. Apple doesn't usually send representatives to even Apple-centric events that sometimes have audiences even much larger than this one. And the fact that they sent somebody here to talk to us about accessibility, it just goes to show their dedication and their acknowledgement of the importance of accessibility. So, you know, anyway, there's a lot of grumblings I heard about. I'm going to talk about iOS 13. Dean covered a lot of the stuff I was going to tell you guys about. But that's okay, you heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So, you know, there's a lot of grumblings when iOS 13 first came out. Oh, the bugs, oh, this or that, oh, is Apple's commitment to accessibility wavering? Well, again, what you saw here today says otherwise. And the fact that we had that, plus the Apple accessibility function being moved up in the menu to the main level, again, speaks to their commitment and understanding of the importance of accessibility. By the way, for anybody who's still holding off on iOS 13 updating, that bug that resulted in loss of audio and certain sounds and speech, that's been fixed now with 13.2. So you don't have to hold off anymore, and you can get in on all the fun stuff that was shown here. So some other things that were put in here, for example, system-wide dark mode. This will be very helpful to low vision users, and the more and more app developers that adopt support for it, it's going to be really nice when you need to have that background dark and the writing light. When I had better vision, that was my preferred way of reading screens. Voice control is another breakthrough feature that they've added. This is going to be tremendously helpful to people with physical impairments, people who cannot interact with a device because maybe they don't have use of their hands or things like that. So look for that, and I think as time goes on, it's going to play very nicely with all the other accessibility features, including VoiceOver. So as far as VoiceOver improvements this year, Dean talked about this a little bit, the customizing of gestures and keyboard commands. This is particularly important, at least I have found this with the clients that I teach who are older, who maybe have arthritis or other issues with manual dexterity, or some people who don't have all the fingers in their hands. You know, people who didn't have 5 fingers, or sometimes even 4 fingers, couldn't use all the gesture set for VoiceOver. So thanks to this enhancement, we can now remap gestures to make sense and to be able to be used by people who don't have full use of their hands. So for example, some things that I've done that have been helpful, the rotor gesture. Some people have a hard time doing that turning of the rotor gesture on the screen. For me, I found it to be much more intuitive to use a gesture that had not been assigned before, the 2-finger swipe left or right. I turn that now so where if I swipe left with 2 fingers, that turns the rotor left. If I do it to the right with 2 fingers, that simulates turning the rotor to the right. For me, that was just much more intuitive, and again, for clients I've worked with who had trouble with the rotor, has been a game changer. I created a single gesture, for example, now that takes me straight to VoiceOver settings. So now I don't have to go to settings, accessibility, and VoiceOver. Now I just simply do this one gesture, in my case a 4-finger single tap, and that takes me straight to the VoiceOver settings. I also created gestures to open notification and control centers. With the new iPhones now, they got rid of the home button, and now we use the swipe down from the bottom or swipe down from the top gestures. For some people, that's doable. For others, not. So I find much easier sometimes to just do this 4-finger swipe down or up, and I can open up each center respectively. So if you want to play with this, you just go to VoiceOver settings and commands and have fun. Okay. So another thing is the sounds and haptics and customizations of sounds that you can do. How many people hate the sound of VoiceOver, like when you flick to something and it clicks really loud? So maybe you turn off your sounds, but then you're thinking, there's certain things you like to have sounds for. I'm one of those people. So you may notice when you first run iOS 13 that now when you interact with the screen with VoiceOver, you're feeling taps on your phone. So for me, I turned off the sound of the flicking that it made, but I have the taptic touch. So every time I flick to something or touch something, I'm still getting that feedback, but just not in a loud, obnoxious way. So you can go in there and customize a lot of this stuff to your heart's content. And you can turn off that haptic feedback too. I know some people hate it. So the good news is you can turn it off if you really hate it. You just go to voiceover settings and audios and sound and haptics, and you can customize this. So activities is another thing that Dean showed us, and I find it to be very helpful, especially when I'm giving demonstrations. Sometimes when I'm going to show the iPhone to somebody for the first time, I don't want them to listen to the speech at full blast like I have going, really high rate of speed. So, and sometimes I might want to use a voice that's a little crisper, a little nicer. So I created an activity that when I go to the rotor and select that, I call it Access Demo. And now you'll hear the Siri female at a much slower speed. And that makes it a little less intimidating when you're giving a demonstration. So, looks like I'm coming to the end here.
2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Boy, what can I get in here? So, some other things they added, for those of you who didn't like 3D touch, the Apple seems to be kind of slowly but surely phasing that out. And they've added a way to access that extra menu, because I found those menus convenient. So by putting focus on, say, the App Store, you can now do a single finger triple tap, and that opens up this menu that gives you access to various aspects in the App Store. So if I want to update apps, for example, I do this gesture, and I find updates on the list, and I double tap that, and now it takes me right to the page where all the updates are. So they've expanded hint descriptions in the camera app. So for those of you who like to take pictures, you can have fun getting more description of things. You can, there's also a watch item. This is really neat. So if you want to watch the progress of a status bar, but maybe do other things on your screen, I put focus on that seat bar. That's what I meant to say. And now I do this gesture, and now VoiceOver is constantly watching that area. And no matter what else I'm doing, it's going to periodically give me the update on that seat bar. So customizing fluctuation settings, those are good. And they've also expanded the speaking of the text on buttons, which helps in button labeling when developers don't do this for us. Sometimes they put it in a graphic. They don't even put it in text that a screen reader can normally read. Well, thanks to this enhanced feature, you can now get a clue as to what that button might be, and then you can use the VoiceOver labeling feature to label that button yourself. Another thing that some people like is that now you can turn off the auto language detection. I find this particularly helpful sometimes when you read emails that might contain different languages, but maybe you just want to read the English part. So you can turn off that auto language detection. So anyway, there's a lot of neat stuff out there. I'll be up here in the front. If anybody wants to ask me questions or things like that, I'll be up here in the front area. Or if not, over by the NFB table, feel free to ask. This is what I do, is I train people, I provide consultation, I do tech support, I do all that stuff. So come by and see me, ask questions, get a business card, or whatever you like. And thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Julian.